3 lives, 3 worlds. Lotus steps. Wherever step goes, lotus blooms. Metamorphosis. Chapter 13, Book 1. What is known is that learning swordsmanship is just a little bit of cleverness out of Qingyu's selfishness. She originally thought that in order to stay in front of Prince Ji, it would be okay to get up early and follow Dragonfly's wishes for a few days. After a few days, she just scrapped the matter with the excuse that she had no bones. However, when she went to look for the dragonfly with a small sword the next day, the dragonfly who was feeding the crane by the small pond in the courtyard was surprised when he saw her. "Princess, at this time, you shouldn't come to me to learn swordsmanship, right?" Changyu was confused. "Am I here early? Then I'll wait until Sister Dragonfly has finished feeding the crane before coming back." When she was about to leave with her sword in hand, Dragonfly stopped her and said, Princess, does it benefit you to know that there is a shadow guard who is good at inquiring about information as your bodyguard?" Before Qingyu could answer, he thought to himself, there are 2 study rooms in the imperial courtyard, a south study room and a north study room. The north study room is the place for discussion. It is at the innermost side of Juswang courtyard and is always tightly guarded, making it difficult for others to approach, while the south study room is the place where meetings are held. The study room can be said to be the place with the richest collection of books in the entire palace. It faces the misty lake in the front and is adjacent to the Songtao Pavilion in the back. Therefore, there are no important documents stored there, so it is not as tightly guarded as the north study room. The prince likes to spend time here in his free time. Dragonfly paused for a moment and looked at Changyu with a pair of smiling eyes. Today, the crown prince has a lot of free time. He added, actually, the crown prince has been quite free recently, and he may have some free time for a while. Changyu was stunned for a while and opened his eyes wide. Huh. Dragonfly threw a small fish to Lone Crane, who was approaching with spread wings, and said funnily, "Hey, what? Could it be that the princess really wants to learn swordsmanship from me?" She turned to look at Changyu, her eyes fixed on her beautiful little face. His face turned for a while, and he said with a smile, "I just want to ask a question. Does the princess want to learn swordsmanship from me at this time, or does she want to find the prince?" Changyu said sarcastically, "Sister Dragonfly, you can see it." The dragonfly smiled. Changyu picked up the hilt of the sword and drew circles on the ground. "I want to play with Brother Shitzi, but he is made of ice. Even if you tell me that he is in the study now, then if I go to find him anonymously, he will throw me out, and he will definitely ask me why I don't practice sword practice with you." She sighed. He is very difficult to deal with." Perhaps her childish words and innocent demeanor pleased Dragonfly. Dragonfly pursed his lips and tapped her forehead with his finger. "You little fool, it's difficult because you lack some strategy. People in the world have many words to describe meeting someone who is naturally compatible with them, such as hit it off right away or hit it off immediately. Changyu feels that he and Dragonfly are innately compatible. Changyu is the only child in the Prince of Jing'an's palace. She has no older brothers or sisters, but she has wanted a sister since she was a child. The sister she imagined was beautiful and intelligent, capable of controlling the prince's palace and controlling Hibiscus. She loved her lovingly, would spend a lot of money on her, and would never confine her. She could tell her whatever was on her mind. She will help her make up her mind. Although Dragonfly couldn't give her a lot of money, she was smart and thoughtful, understood her thoughts, and was willing to help her with suggestions. Therefore, she did not regard Dragonfly as a guard from the beginning, but regarded her as her sister. Because in the Lichuan Palace, apart from making friends with Ji Mingfeng, she actually had no other worries or wishes, so Dragonfly's ideas for her basically revolved around this one and only theme: how to deal with Ji Mingfeng. And because Dragonfly was originally Ji Mingfeng's shadow guard, she knew the prince very well. What's more terrible is that she was also good at snooping for information, so when she betrayed Ji Mingfeng, she was sure to betray him. Qinyu clearly felt that since Dragonfly came to her side, she had become even more powerful in handling Ji Mingfeng's matter. For example, the little strategy that Dragonfly taught her to go to the study to pester Ji Mingfeng was very useful. How to end the excuse of learning swordsmanship. It's simple. When you went to the study to see the crown prince, you pushed it on me and said that after I taught you one move or two, I saw that, oh, you really had no bones and I didn't want to teach you anymore. Since that's the case. Since you have no bones, you have given up on this idea, but you are bored in Chunwei courtyard and want to borrow a few books from him to pass the time. Your Majesty, he will lend you 2 or 3 volumes of books, but it is not appropriate to mention that you want to stay in his study to read them at this time. You take the books back and return them hours later, and say that you read quickly and have read them. It's over, and I want to borrow a few more books. This time I got the book, and you returned it half an hour later, saying that the book I picked this time was not satisfactory. You read a few pages, but you were not very interested and wanted to exchange some books. Your Majesty will allow you to exchange books. After you exchange them, you pretend to turn a few pages, saying that you don't know if it is really interesting. If you take it back and read it, you will find it uninteresting in the end, and you will have to walk a long way to exchange it with him. Come on. It's troublesome to go back and forth, so why not just read in the South Study for a while? Chang Yu followed this method, and these words actually found a place in Ji Mingfeng's South Study room. And when she went to the South Study room again the next day, selected a book and pretended to sit down on the armchair where she had sat yesterday and read it with her eyes down, the prince did not chase her away. The prince just glanced at her and then focused his attention on the letter in his hand again. Dragonfly had told her that even if the prince did not chase her away, she should not get carried away. In the past few days, she should not take the initiative to talk to the prince, and she must pretend to be sincere in learning so that she could stay in the South Study room for a long time. If you wait a long time, the opportunity will naturally come. Don't try to use your little brains or tricks in the middle, because none of these will work for the prince. The only thing that can win the prince's high regard is patience. And the opportunity. Whenever the prince is willing to take the initiative to talk to her, that is the opportunity. She just waited patiently. Qingyu agreed with Dragonfly's opinion. She was a perseverant person, so even though Ji Mingfeng was so reticent that she could stay silent all day in the study room if she didn't speak, she still suppressed her desire to speak. The first 2 days were indeed difficult, but on the 3rd day she discovered that a certain pamphlet in the South Study room was actually written in a language she did not recognize. He turned a fake Xiangxue into a real Xiangxue and accidentally studied in the South Study room for 6 or 7 days. On the 7th day, when Qingyu had completely forgotten her original intention of coming to the study and was immersed in studying hard, the so-called opportunity of Dragonfly silently fell on her head. At the beginning of the afternoon, Miss Qin Sume walked lightly to the South Study room and brought the prince a cup of sweet syrup with lily and lotus seeds. Chang Yu only realized 2 days ago that the text she is studying now is the ancient text of the Hutu tribe. In order to access the information easily these days, she spent most of the time burying herself between the bookshelves at the same height as Liang, staying on the high seat where she could search for books. Above, if an outsider entered the study, he would not be able to see her at all. So Miss Qin didn't see her when she entered. While serving sugar water outside, Miss Qin said 2 thoughtful words to the prince. I just know that you have been studying calligraphy and reading in the South Study room in the past few days. The 2 servants around you are careless and they will not remember your spring day. I like to drink sugar water. Although I know that you don't like to be disturbed when you are reading, and I am just annoying, I thought about it and I stewed a cup according to your preference and sent it to you. I picked the lotus seeds myself and planted the lilies myself, even if Jiwen remembers to ask the kitchen to cook it for you. I guess the kitchen can't stew it with this taste. You try it. Ji Mingfeng took a bite. Miss Qin asked him softly, Is it still okay? Ji Mingfeng replied, Not bad. Really? Miss Qin said with obvious kindness in her voice, Then I will make another cup of stew at this time tomorrow and send it over. But she exclaimed softly, Oh, I almost forgot that I will accompany the princess tomorrow. I will burn incense at Bowen Temple, and I will stew it for you only the day after tomorrow. Ji Mingfeng said, It's up to you. Miss Qin smiled and said, Then it will still be lotus seed lily in the future? Miss Qin's voice slowly floated into Cheng Yu's ears, and Cheng Yu felt that the voice was very soft and graceful, like the spring breeze bringing green, which was pleasant to hear. When Cheng Yu stepped into the Lichuan prince's mansion, although he saw Qin Sume several times, he actually never heard her speak close by. At this moment, she really heard Miss Qin's words, and she felt that she finally understood why Prince Ji, who could not even buy a word for money, was willing to talk to her more. Miss Qin really has a good voice. Just listening to her talk brings me the joy of tying silk and bamboo. Cheng Yu secretly admired in his heart. While admiring, she stood at the top of the library ladder, trying to get a collection of ancient Huatu poems that was bundled at the highest point of the library. Unexpectedly, his hand slipped and the huge book fell to the ground with a thud. Miss Qin shouted softly, "Who?" Cheng Yu held the book ladder and came down to pick up the book. When he heard the soft drink, he was about to respond, but he heard Ji Mingfeng's calm voice. "It's probably a mouse." Mouse? She accidentally stepped on the last step and fell down. Fortunately, the bottom step was not high from the ground, so it didn't hurt if she fell. She rubbed her head and sat up, feeling a little angry and in disbelief. "Rat? I? Mouse?" At this moment, Ji Mingfeng's voice came from behind her. "You're said to be a mouse, but are you really rolling on the ground to prove yourself?" Cheng Yu turned around, and Ji Mingfeng walked around the first bookshelf and picked up the ancient poetry collection that fell on the ground with one hand. He handed it to her with the other hand, took her hand and gently pulled her up from the ground. Cheng Yu was very angry that Ji Mingfeng said she was a mouse, but she did not dare to be too angry. She pointed at the ladder behind her and argued in a low voice. "Why do you say I am a mouse? I didn't mean to make any noise. I just walked out I fell off the book ladder, and it hurt a lot." Prince Ji looked her up and down. "If you are scurrying around in the library all day long, that's a mouse." He added, "If it hurts from the fall, let Dragonfly take you back and find a doctor." Of course, she didn't want Dragonfly to take her back, so she immediately said, "Oh, it's actually not as painful as the fall." She curled her lips and rubbed her wrist, and then she noticed Qin Sume standing beside the bookshelf. Miss Qin's expression was filled with shock, but she suppressed the shock when her eyes met hers. She curved her lips and smiled politely at her. She said in a gentle voice, "I don't know, princess, too. Here, it's Sume who is rude." Cheng Yu rubbed his nose. "Miss Qin, what's wrong with me? I didn't pay much attention when I picked up the book, which disturbed the two of you's conversation. Don't worry about me. You talk about yours. I still have a book to pick up." Ji Mingfeng asked her, "Which other books do I want to pick up?" Cheng Yu said, "The meaning of Huatuyu," a little confused. "But doesn't Miss Qin still have something to say to you, the prince?" Ji Mingfeng moved his gaze to Qin Sume. Miss Qin also glanced at the prince. Her face paled, but her expression almost immediately returned, and she showed a gentle smile and said to Cheng Yu, "Actually, I have nothing to do. I plan to leave right away." "Yes, because I heard the noise here. I was delayed for a moment." Shortly turned to Qing Yuifu, "Then Sume will not disturb the prince's study with the princess, so I will leave first." When he turned around, he still had a smile on his face. The gentle smile just now, but if you pay close attention, you will find that the smile is a bit stiff. However, Cheng Yu didn't notice Miss Qin's expression at that time. When Qin Sume closed the study door, Prince Ji flew up to the bookshelf and pulled out a thick book. When he landed, he threw it to her. Cheng Yu lowered his head and saw that the sheepskin on the cover are the 5 characters, the meaning of Huatu language. She thanked Prince Ji, patted the dust on the books with care, followed Ji Mingfeng around the bookshelf to the outer room with the 2 volumes in her arms, sat down on the armchair where she usually read, and began to read. It wasn't until she read page 20 that Cheng Yu suddenly remembered that she didn't seem to be here to study. She finally remembered her original intention and realized that the prince had spoken several words to her for the first time today. According to Dragonfly's intention, when the prince takes the initiative to speak, that's when she can be clever and get close to him. At this time, he will never kick her out of the study as soon as she opens her mouth to get close to him. Realizing this, she couldn't help but close the book with a snap. Ji Mingfeng, who was sitting by the window, glanced at her. "Well, don't get carried away." She coughed, pretending that nothing happened, picked up the book, the meaning of Hutu language, and covered half of her face. When the prince looked away, she peeked at him over the edge of the book again. Prince Ji drank sugar water and read a book by the window. There are green locust trees and green willows in front of the window, and the new green branches can be lined up on the door, like a pair of green curtains covering the doors and windows. Lazy sunlight swam into the room through the gaps in the curtains, giving the solemn study a somewhat warm spring feel. Even an ice cube like Prince Ji didn't look so cold and unapproachable in the warmth of this room and the spring breeze, so Changyu glanced at him and forgot to cover his gaze. Ji Shitzi stared at her for half a stick of incense and raised his head. "Want a drink?" Changyu blinked. Prince Ji glanced at the porcelain bowl in front of him and then at her. Changyu immediately leaned forward and did not miss the opportunity to talk to Ji Mingfeng. He thought he was close and spoke naturally. "Brother, Prince, would you like to treat me to some sugar water?" He grabbed a spoon and filled more than half a bowl for himself. "Thank you, Prince." "Brother, let me have a taste." Prince Ji looked at her fluent movements and listened to her fluent words, and was silent for a moment. "I shouldn't have expressed the intention of inviting you to taste it, right?" Changyu was stunned. But everything was filled. She stared at the porcelain bowl in her hand, and smiled dryly to find a way for herself. "Haha, everything is filled. A bowl of sugar water. Please don't be stingy, brother Prince." She took 2 sips, and the sugar water went into her throat. He immediately frowned. "Oh my god, this is too sweet." Ji Mingfeng glanced at her. "I think it's just right." "It's so sweet, isn't it just right?" Changyu blurted out these 7 words before he remembered it. Just then, Miss Qin said that this cup of sweet soup was stewed according to Prince Ji's preference. In other words, Prince Ji just likes this sweet and cloying taste. Only children like to eat sweets that are so sweet that they are greasy, and Prince Ji actually also likes to eat such sweets. Changyu thought this was so novel. She felt like she had discovered a new world. She held the porcelain bowl and leaned forward a little. She was only a book away from Ji Mingfeng. "Brother Prince, you actually like sweets. You're a bit cute." Ji Mingfeng. Changyu went back and put the sugar water that he had only taken 2 sips back on the tray. "You like such a cute taste, but I don't really like this kid's taste. It's too sweet, so I won't drink it." "Thank you." After she said this, seeing that Prince Ji never responded, she thought it might be because Prince Ji had a quota for how many words he could talk to her every day. He had already spoken to her several times just now, and today's quota had been used up, so he didn't want to talk to her anymore. She wasn't too disappointed. There was only so much time to come, so she planned to go back and read again. Unexpectedly, Prince Ji stopped her and said, "Drink up." Changyu's first reaction was, "Hey, today's quota hasn't been used up yet?" The second reaction was, what a drink?" Prince Ji tapped his knuckles in front of the porcelain bowl. "You served the sweet soup yourself." Changyu stared at the sweet soup for a long time and chose to refuse. "I don't like it so sweet." Ji Mingfeng was indifferent. "I know." He raised his head and looked at her, his expression cold, but the corners of his lips curved. "You don't like it, so I invited you to drink. If you don't finish drinking, don't read tomorrow." Changyu was stunned. "You?" She realized something, frowned, and said suspiciously, "I don't like drinking, but the prince brother insists on me drinking." "Is it because I just said you are cute? You do have to force me to drink this?" She quickly defended herself, but cute is actually a good word to praise people. "I did it because..." Prince Ji interrupted her. "Do you still want to have another drink?" She immediately shook her head. Prince Ji said calmly, "You don't have to drink if you don't want to, but don't come to the South study room tomorrow." Changyu was annoyed. How could this be possible? Prince Ji ignored her. Changyu hesitated for a while, and finally picked up the porcelain bowl, pinched his nose and drank all the sweet sugar water. He immediately touched a large tea vat and poured a vat of tea water into his stomach before he regained his composure. After all, he was still unconvinced and couldn't help but murmured in a low voice, "But you are very cute." This is really a good word. We use the word cute. Don't we only use this word when we want to praise someone? Brother Prince, you are so stingy to give me a hard time for such a kind word. Prince Ji turned a page of the book. It seems you really want to have another drink. Chinyu couldn't help but made a face. Don't threaten me with this anymore. There is no more sugar water. He shook his head and sighed. You are really unreasonable. Ji Shitzi put down the book and looked at her. I can make some ice stew again. His eyes fell on the empty tray. It's sweeter than this, and then I'll stop you and drink it for you. Changyu was stunned. You can't do this. I can do this. Prince Ji looked indifferent, because I am really unreasonable. You. Chen Yuxian lowered his head. Prince Ji asked her, do you still want to continue arguing with me? She shook her head sluggishly. Prince Ji nodded with satisfaction. If you don't want to argue, just go back and read a book. The rest of the day in the South study room, the two of them spent entirely reading books, and as soon as they saw the lanterns coming on at the second quarter of the hour. On the way out of Jeshuanjiwen, Chengyu recalled his performance in the afternoon. Then she reflected for a long time. After that, Prince Ji never spoke to her again today. Even when she left the study to say goodbye to him, he just said yes. She felt that she had most likely made Ji Mingfeng unhappy. And she quickly found the crux. She probably shouldn't have said that Prince Ji's sweet tooth is cute. Prince Ji is a majestic young man who is 8 feet tall, and he is cold and sharp in dealing with others. A young man like him may really not like others to call him cute. Why? She scratched her head in frustration. Miss Qin, for example, understands the prince very well. Although she didn't think the few words Miss Qin said to the prince just now were anything special, but in retrospect, it can be said that every word Miss Qin said touched the prince's heart. For example, Miss Qin knew that the prince did not like to be disturbed when he was reading, so when she brought sweet soup to him, she said that she was bringing it to him because she was annoying others. Another example is that she left Miss Qin to continue talking with the prince, and Miss Qin heard that the prince said that she wanted to help her. After getting the book, he smiled and said he was leaving so as not to disturb the two of them from reading. Although she has never heard Miss Qin say more words to the prince, she can already guess that Miss Qin is not trying to argue with the prince, and she does not pick out the things that the prince doesn't like to say to make him unhappy. But she was really too worried. Alas, today is already like this, so we have to keep up our efforts tomorrow. But it was also a difficult question what she should say and what she shouldn't say when she saw Prince Ji tomorrow. She didn't know what he liked to hear. She walked out of Jeshuanjiwen with a thoughtful look on her face. The sad look on her face was noticed by Dragonfly, who was lying on the early cherry tree outside Jeswang courtyard, drinking wine and waiting for her. Chinyu confided his sorrows to Dragonfly. The first concern was that the prince was difficult to grasp, and the second concern was that he was not considerate enough. The main concern was that the prince was difficult to grasp. Dragonfly swung the wine gourd in his hand for a few times. In my opinion, it couldn't be better for you guys to get along today. In front of the crown prince, you can say whatever you want to say and do whatever you want to do to him. How to treat him, there is really no need to deliberately please like Qin Sume. He smiled and said, the prince may not like you to treat him like Miss Qin. Chengyu was a little confused by Dragonfly's words, but she didn't delve into it. Seeing Dragonfly's appearance of being in control, she gained some confidence and happily returned to the hospital with her. The next day Chengyu did not go to Jeshuanjiwen early in the morning as usual. Because she had a drink with Dragonfly last night, Dragonfly told her that the singing of orioles at Qingke Villa on the outskirts of Hanqing was a unique spring scenery in Lichuan Prefecture. She said that this place was by no means a common place, and there were always many talented people and distinguished guests who came to listen to it every year. Warbler. Dragonfly doesn't talk much, but he is very good at talking. Therefore, when he talks about this holy place for outing, it makes people feel like he is there. as if he really saw tourists asking for poems with wine, talented people helping him get drunk and couplets, and beautiful ladies tuning strings to harmonize with each other. Scene. Chinyu was not interested in the poems of the talented scholars, but he was very interested in the singing of the singers. He was tickled by Dragonfly's words. Early the next morning, he and Dragonfly went to Tangqi Villa to listen to the Orioles. It took 3 moments to return to the house. Because she was an athletic girl and not as fragile as other young ladies, she didn't feel very tired even after walking and playing around for most of the day. After returning home, she thought that she would see Yushir when she was reading in the south study room on weekdays. She could catch up with Ji Mingfeng to check it out, so she went to Jushuanjiwen without thinking about it. It was a nice day. Chang Yu stepped into Jushuang courtyard and saw Ji Mingfeng from afar. The south study room is next to Yanyu Lake. Smoked willows are planted all over the lakeside, and there are a few apricot trees. The green silk is falling, and the spring apricots are fragrant. It is a beautiful scene in spring. Chang Yu walked closer and saw Prince Ji wearing a blue shirt, holding a scroll in his hand, sitting by the window, looking very handsome. But the prince's eyes did not fall on the page of the book. The prince frowned slightly and looked at the lake view in the distance, not knowing what he was thinking. Chang Yu waved and greeted Ji Mingfeng from a long distance away. "Brother Prince." Hearing her voice, Prince Ji was slightly startled and looked back at her from the lake. But the crown prince did not respond to her. His eyes only stayed on her for a moment, then moved away and looked back into the lake. Chinyu rubbed his nose and walked towards the study door without caring. It was common for the prince to ignore her, so she didn't mind. As for the prince frowning at the lake just now, Prince Ji might not be very happy today. Then she shouldn't bother Prince Ji today. She should let him be alone. Don't people like to be alone when they are unhappy? But it's not a good idea to turn around and leave after you've already come. Or should you go to the study to greet Prince Ji and then find an excuse to leave? Yes, this is appropriate. She pushed open the study door, greeted Ji Mingfeng, and then wandered in front of her armchair for a few moments, then suddenly remembered. I promised Sister Dragonfly that I would embroider double-sided embroidery with her today. Why did I come to the south study room again? Brother Shitzi, I have some other business matters. Today I will. Ji Mingfeng glanced at her and interrupted her rudely. That's serious business. After a pause, he reached out and tapped the table. Come here and drink some sugar water. Chang Yu was stunned and saw a white porcelain soup pot and a white porcelain bowl placed on the desk in front of Ji Mingfeng. She didn't quite understand why he asked her to drink sugar water. Could it be that she said she was cute yesterday and he actually held a grudge today, knowing that she hated drinking sweet sugar water, so he prepared this just for her? He can't be like this. Chang Yu leaned over suspiciously, and Ji Mingfeng had already poured the sugar water and placed it in front of her. He himself wrote and opened the book, making comments on the book he had just flipped through. Chang Yushu glanced at him. The prince noticed her gaze and raised his eyes to look at her. She quickly retracted her gaze, lingering and praising the prince's calligraphy. Generally speaking, you use a soft brush. It's easy to lose your energy when writing in lower regular script, but Brother Shitzi, your strokes are both form and spirit. You are so amazing. The prince ignored her comment and kept writing with his right hand. He tapped the index finger of his left hand in front of the white porcelain bowl filled with sugar water and said concisely, "Drink." Chinyu lingered for a while, and after a long time, she said, "Brother Prince, I don't really like sweets." The prince stopped writing and looked up at her. So I think," but seeing Prince Ji's eyebrows frowning, she suddenly remembered that the crown prince was unhappy today. Didn't she just reflect on herself yesterday? Even if Qin Sumei didn't understand, she couldn't get into trouble at this moment. She stopped immediately, changed the subject straight away, and forced a smile on her face. "So I think, although I usually don't like sweets." She thought carefully, "But this is what you left for me. The sugar water, since the crown prince's brother specially left it for me, I shouldn't be picky about food." As she said that, She observed Ji Mingfeng's expression while picking up the white porcelain bowl. Seeing Prince Ji looking at her for a moment, she didn't take any chances. I couldn't get it out, so I had to take a sip without any effort. When the sugar water touched her lips, she said, "Why is this lily and lotus seed sugar water cold?" Ji Shitzi said calmly, "You are late and the sugar water is cold." Is it Tang Shui's fault? She admitted her mistake quickly. It's my fault. But in the end, she still didn't want to drink. She hesitated for a long time and then found a reason for herself. But I think since it's cold, I'd better not drink this bowl of sugar water, she said with a sincere look. This is also for the sake of the prince brother, because... She leaned over a little and explained the internal logic of the matter to him. Look, if I drink this cold sugar water and get sick, who will I trouble to take care of me in the end? Of course it's you, the prince's brother. Wouldn't it cause you trouble again? Ji Shitzi didn't even look at her. He dipped his pen in the ink and said calmly, "Don't bother me. Dr. Ji lives in the yard next to you. He is very good at treating bad stomachs." Chang Yu's heart skipped a beat. Well, she was careless. The prince was not as easy to deceive as Xiaohua and Li Xiang. She, a princess who could still be at ease in the bandits' den and followed him all day and night without any problems, wanted him to believe that she was suddenly charming. Being so weak that he can be knocked down by a bowl of cold soup is indeed an embarrassment for him. She picked up the white porcelain bowl and muttered reluctantly, "Then I'll just drink it." But when the sugar water entered my stomach, I realized that it actually tasted quite good. Chang Yu was very surprised and asked Prince Ji suspiciously, "Why is this not too sweet today? Did you tell Miss Qin not to stew it so sweet?" "No. Didn't Miss Qin go to make incense today?" Prince Ji paused after hearing this. Is Qin Sume the only one in the world who knows how to make soup? "Oh, Miss Qin didn't stew it. Then who stewed it?" she asked while taking a sip. Seeing that Prince Ji didn't answer, she joked, "It can't be you, brother prince, who stewed it." Prince Ji suddenly looked up. "Why can't it be stewed by me?" Qingyu didn't answer immediately. Qingyu choked. Choking, Qingyu coughed and asked Ji Shitzi a question. "Brother Shitzi, did you stew it specially for me?" The prince did not answer. Qingyu patted his chest to try to calm himself down from choking. Really? Prince Ji finally replied as if he couldn't stand it anymore. "Stew it for yourself, it's too much." Qingyu finally stopped coughing and said puzzledly, "But you like to eat very sweet and lovely flavors." Prince Ji raised his eyebrows. "Try saying something cute again." Changyu stopped talking. Ji Shitzi said calmly, "I don't want to eat so sweet today, can't I?" Changyu nodded. "Okay, that's okay." But the prince's taste in sweet soup always made her curious. Qingyu couldn't help but ask, "You drink sweet and not too sweet, so do you think the not too sweet is better or the sweet one is better?" Today, the prince didn't think she talked too much. Instead, he asked her, "Which one do you think tastes better?" She raised the white porcelain bowl in her hand. "Of course this tastes delicious." She didn't have anything to say. In the past, I always thought that when it came to stewing sugar water, our Li Xing stew was the best. I didn't expect that, Brother Shitzi, you would also stews very well. Ji Shitzi lowered his head and wrote a few strokes in the book. After she drank the entire bowl of sugar water, she suddenly said calmly, "Then how does what I made compare with what your maid made? Which one is better?" Changyu blurted out, "Of course it's Li Xiang." Seeing Ji Mingfeng's unkind look, she paused smartly. "She can't compare to you, the crown prince." Ji Mingfeng stopped writing and looked at her for a while. Changyu gave herself a slap in her heart. Ji Mingfeng was not stupid. She could fool the silly little flower by talking like this. How could she fool Ji Mingfeng? Looking at Ji Mingfeng's cold expression, Changyu felt emotional in her heart. Today, she made Ji Mingfeng unhappy again. She is really a genius. Forget it, let's go back today and learn from Dragonfly. And then we'll continue our efforts tomorrow. She put the bowl back and lowered her head in front of Ji Mingfeng's freezing gaze. "I might have something else to do. I'll first." Ji Mingfeng said coldly, "Go back and sit down and read." He threw the book he just marked to her, then lowered his head and went about other things and never looked at her again. A thick book fell into Chungyu's arms. She felt it looked familiar. When she turned to the cover, she saw that it was the book on the meaning of Hutu language that she had been studying selflessly these past few days. She flipped back casually and saw Ji Mingfeng's annotations in regular script, all of which contained difficult explanations. The further back she turned, the more surprised she became. She couldn't help but say, "Brother Prince, you." Ji Mingfeng interrupted her coldly. "If you want to learn Hutu language, then learn it hard. Sometimes you listen to the Orioles and sometimes you do embroidery. When can you learn it?" Chengyu was stunned for a moment. "I'm actually just learning to play, not that." Prince Ji looked at her with stern expressions on his face. "If you want to learn, then study hard. There is no such thing as learning for fun." Chengyu tried hard to understand the hidden meaning of Ji Shitzi. After a while, he asked with some doubts, "Then what the prince brother means is that I can't go back now, right?" Prince Ji rubbed his eyebrows. "This is a good question. What do you think?" Chengyu was silent for a moment and then asked, "Then, do I need to come here early tomorrow?" Prince Ji looked at her expressionlessly. "I don't think I should teach you what it means to study hard. You may have heard of the chicken dancing, hanging beams to stab the buttocks, chiseling the wall to steal the light, and the firefly reflecting the snow." Chengyu looked up blankly. "You don't need to hear the rooster dancing. The rooster crows at Mao hour. Even if I came to the South study room to study at that time, you would definitely not be here, brother." She was confused. "It's not like going to school, like that it would have been stupid for me to come here to study alone." Prince Ji took another book, lowered his head and flipped through a few pages. "How do you know I'm definitely not here?" "Because the South study room is just a place to spend time in your free time. How can anyone start killing time when the rooster crows at midnight?" Prince Ji said calmly, "Maybe I'm just that free. How about we give it a try?" Changyu was silent for a moment. Prince Ji was going to compete with her. She couldn't win against Prince Ji. She gave up immediately. "Then I'd better not try." She thought for a while, then gritted her teeth and said, "But I think, Prince Brother, you have a lot to do all day long, so you should get more rest. We really don't need to dance to the sound of a chicken, so." Ji Shitzi closed the book with a few pages in his hand and handed it to her. "When you are familiar with this book, you can come and negotiate terms with me." Qingyu lowered her head and saw that the book Ji Shitzi had specially picked out for her had the words Duda printed on it, 1,000-year-old events of the Hutu tribe. It is a history book. Judging from the title of this book, it is a history book that records the entire 1,000-year history of the Hutu tribe. Qingyu separated her thumb and index finger to measure the thickness of the book. It was 3 inches long. She felt that the thickness of the book was worthy of a time span of 1,000 years. At the same time, she also felt sincere admiration for Li Chuan's bookbinding technology. Chengyu was confused at the separated thumb and index finger of her left hand. Prince Ji looked at her. "What's wrong?" She worried. "It's so thick. It's all about ancient Hutu language. I feel like I might not be able to finish it in a while." Prince Ji nodded in understanding. "So you have to work hard." On this day, Qingyu sat in the south study until it was time to light the lamp, and then Prince Ji allowed her to leave. Since then, Qingyu has lived a terrible life of going to Huamao in the south study room of Jushuanjiwen to study every day, accompanied by the morning star in the east sky. Everyone who is familiar with Qingyu knows that although Princess Hongyu has many unreliable qualities, she is extremely intelligent. She can speak at the age of 1 and is literate at the age of 2. When Prince Jing'an taught her articles at the age of 3, she can read and write. Chanted. Although she never went to school for a day because she grew up in Shawalu and only studied with Xu Jin, by the age of 8 or 9, she had read through thousands of books in Shawalu. After looking through the Shirwa Tower, they went to the palace to borrow the treasures that the emperors of all dynasties had hidden in the Yuanyuan pavilion in the royal library. While others read the book and chanted it word by word, she read the book and flicked through 10 lines, or even 1 page at a time, and she could never forget it. In a word, Princess Hongyu is extremely talented when it comes to studying, and her intelligence is almost magical. Therefore, she is not afraid of Ji Mingfeng forcing her to study. But as she has grown up, she has always been a girl who goes to bed late, wakes up early, and gets up late. She has never gotten up before Chenshur, and she has no idea what Venus looks like. This time, Prince Ji asked her to accompany Venus. Nan Shufeng Hua Mao, this is what she is afraid of. Dragonfly urged her to get up early for 4 or 5 days. During these 4 or 5 days, Dragonfly carried her to the south study room, and when Ji Mingfeng was already sitting by the window, she was reading books. She admired Ji Mingfeng very much. Since it was hard to get enough sleep every day, Chang Yu would doze off at the desk at every turn. The strange thing was that when Ji Crown Prince kept her in the study room, he was indifferent to her dozing off. Even if she slept on the desk for half a day, Ji Crown Prince would it was all right. Sometimes she would wake up and get up from the table, wiping her saliva. Prince Ji, who was pouring tea for himself, would also pour her a cup of hot tea to drink. She couldn't quite understand Prince Ji. One time, she couldn't hold it back. When she went to get hot tea at Prince Ji's table, she asked, "Did you see me dozing off just now, brother Prince?" Prince Ji glanced at her. "What do you want to say?" She mustered up the courage to confess, "I actually doze off on the desk every morning." "Have you seen it?" Prince Ji said. So, she thought about it. "I think that since you can bear with me dozing off, it doesn't matter whether I come to study at the same time or not. Besides, I come to study so early and I don't get enough sleep every day. Look at me like this. Don't you feel a little regretful or guilty about your previous decision?" Prince Ji smiled. "Do you think I feel regretful or guilty?" "Not quite." Prince Ji nodded. "It's good to know." He glanced at her again and said, "What are you doing in a daze? You can sit back and study." Chang Yu spent a long time going back to his desk, and when he opened Lao Ho's 1,000-year-old stories of the Huatu department, he struggled again. "Then how can I come to the study 1 or half an hour later?" She sighed. "It's really hard to get up early." Ji Shitzi lowered his eyes and drank tea, and answered her calmly. "Didn't I tell you to come and negotiate terms with me after you have read the book in your hand?" The direction pointed out by Prince Ji made Chengyu see a glimmer of hope to escape from the sea of suffering. In the next 2 days, she not only danced after hearing the rooster, but also strung her buttocks. Not only did she study in the study, but she also borrowed books to study. Fortunately, there were enough lights in the palace, so there was no need for her to dig through the walls to steal the light. Seeing her like this, Dragonfly pointed her out funny. "You little fool, His Majesty, he doesn't actually want you to study, he just wants to find an excuse to let you go to the study early. He wants you to read the ancient book of Huatubu. It's just a joke, you're new to Huatu. He knows that no matter how smart you are, you won't be able to read such a thick book within a few months, so you take it seriously." Chenyu was a little confused under this profound instruction. He bit his pen and looked at Dragonfly. "Why does he want me to go to the study early? Does it make any difference if I go to the study earlier and later?" Dragonfly, who was warming the wine at the banquet table, smiled when he heard this and pushed an emerald lotus leaf cup in front of Chenyu. Under the warm candlelight, he saw that the jadeite was flawless and the jade cup was moist. Chenyu recognized that this was a cup that Dragonfly often admired. "Just a wine glass." Dragonfly pursed her lips and said, "I actually have many drinking utensils, but this is the only one you often see me enjoying." "Why?" Before Chenyu could answer, he had already picked up the empty cup and put his hand on the window. "A jade cup can be used to bathe with candles and the moon." She looked at the jade cup that was even more green and lovely under the bright moonlight, "Because I like this cup the most. I think it has thousands of exquisiteness and thousands of cuteness. It looks the same under the lamp, but it looks the same under the moon. One thing, another thing under the sun. Looking at it makes me happy. I wish I could look at it as soon as I open my eyes." She looked at Chenyu with a smile. "The princess is smart, I say this. Princess, do you understand?" Changyu was dumbfounded for a while. "Are you saying that because the crown prince likes me very much and wants to see me, he ordered me to go to the south study room early to draw my hair?" Dragonfly smiled and said, "The princess is really smart." Changyu lay on the table and pondered. I am committed to making good friends with him. So, we're already good friends? Are we friends? She thought for a while, then shook her head. No, if we are friends, it should be like Xiaoli and I. I can invite him to drink tea, watch a movie, go shopping, eat fruit, chat, and play hand in hand. We are all equals, but my brother, the prince, and I are what he says, and you are not allowed to have any opinions or refutes, and I don't dare to ask him to drink tea, watch a movie, go shopping, and eat fruit, let alone chat and joke with him. Dragonfly raised his cheeks and looked at her. Then you can try to make an appointment with him tomorrow. We can have tea, watch a movie, go shopping, and eat fruit. We will make an appointment. How you treat Xiaoli is how you treat him. His tone was full of encouragement. If you want to just kidding with him, you can give it a try tomorrow. Chinyu thought for a while, a little worried. Then he won't beat me? Before, I wanted to chat with him once and asked him to come. He told me not to chat. If I say another word, it's like he's going to beat me up. Dragonfly looked at her wrinkled little face and couldn't help laughing and assured her it was the past, but he won't know it tomorrow. Then he added with a mysterious look, he won't know it in the future. Seeing her expression still entangled, he added, would you like to make a bet with me? He glanced at the table and said, only this emerald lotus leaf cup. Changyu closed the book and thought she was too familiar with the word bet. Then take a gamble. Naturally, I studied in the South study room again the next day. Dragonfly enlightened Chengyu with many words last night. Because of Dragonfly's enlightenment, Chengyu was a little happy and a little nervous when she saw Ji Mingfeng today. For the first time, she didn't doze off. She held the book half-heartedly and peeked at Ji Mingfeng from behind the book. She didn't know how to do it, so she took a few peeks and was discovered by Prince Ji. She was a little embarrassed, but not embarrassed either, and smiled generously at Ji Mingfeng. Ji Mingfeng ignored her. Not long after, she was caught peeking at him again. After being caught, she scratched her head and gave herself a big smile. Ji Mingfeng was confused. Did you fall asleep today? What do you want to do when you smile like this? Changyu was also confused. Nothing to do, she said slowly. I just feel that I feel particularly close to you, Brother Crown Prince, when I see you today. I am sitting here, watching you reading under the lamp, and I think it is really beautiful. I just wanted to take a second look, but you noticed me, so I just smiled at you. She innocently confessed her feelings. Because Brother Crown Prince has been very good to me recently, I am very happy, especially today. When I look at Brother Crown Prince, you feel happy. I think you should feel the same when you see me. She didn't finish this sentence, because Ji Mingfeng's expression is a little strange at this time. He looked at her, but his gaze did not focus on her, but seemed to pass through her. He seemed to be in a daze. Chinyu called out tentatively, Prince, brother. He didn't reply to her. Changyu stood up hesitantly, wanting to go over and see what was going on with him, but inadvertently stepped on a small round object on the ground. When it slipped, she panicked and tried to hold on to Ji Mingfeng's desk, which was an arm's length away, but reached out and grabbed the desk. On the inkstone. Bang! The inkstone fell. Bang! She fell too. Only then did Prince Ji react from his daze. He lowered his eyes and looked at Chengyu with an indistinguishable look in his eyes. After a while, he walked around the desk and stood in front of Chengyu. Chengyu was frowning and picking up her sleeves to look at the ink stains on her sleeves. When Ji Shitzi came over, the first thing she saw was the pair of soap boots on Ji Shitzi's feet. Then, she saw the square inkstone broken in half next to the pair of exquisite soap boots. Well, the Tsaoshi reclining Buddha inkstone on Prince Ji's desk was the most precious one. She couldn't throw anything but this inkstone. She sat there with her head drooped and dejectedly waiting for Prince Ji to teach her a lesson. After a long time, Prince Ji's lesson did not come. She couldn't help but raise her head, and her eyes met Prince Ji's. Prince Ji looked at her, as if he was deep in thought. Although he didn't speak, he didn't seem angry either. She became bolder and took the initiative to apologize. I broke the Crown Prince's brother's inkstone. I'm very sorry, but I have the same ink tone at home. Yes, I will compensate you later. She twisted her sleeves with her fingers, but if you were willing to help me just now, I wouldn't have broken your ink tone, and it would have hurt me too. This was her little cleverness, and it was obviously hers. It was wrong, but she insisted on blaming the fault on the two of them. She also said she was pitiful, which seemed to be unreasonable for Prince Ji to lecture her again. This was a skill that she had learned without any teacher after working for Zhu Jin for many years, but she also knew that she was arrogant, so she felt guilty. Seeing that Prince Ji still didn't speak, she felt a little uneasy. She was worried that Prince Ji had seen through her trick, so he ignored her. The more she thought about it, the more worried she became. So after complaining about the pain of being thrown, she hurriedly tried to make amends. But actually, it doesn't hurt that much. It just hurt a little when I fell down, but it's nothing. After saying that, she got up from the ground obediently, acting as if she had been so sensible and obedient from the beginning to the end, and was not unreasonable at all. What a clever thing. Prince Ji still didn't say anything. Under Zhu Jin's suppression, her self-taught methods were limited to these few tricks. After using them, she didn't know what else she could do. He stood there awkwardly for a moment. After a long time, there was no response from Ji Mingfeng. She coughed quietly. Then, I'll go back and read. At this time, Prince Ji finally spoke, but he asked something irrelevant. I just asked you why you were smiling like that. What did you say in reply to me? Chang Yu was puzzled. She thought about it. She spoke very loudly just now, and of course he didn't hear clearly what she said back to him, but he asked her with a cold face. Was he asking her to remind her of what she had just said? What she said and did was very disrespectful. Is she very unruly? Thinking of this, her heart sank and she felt a little panicked. The reason why she exceeded the courtesy today was because she believed what Dragonfly said with full satisfaction and thought that she was very close to Ji Mingfeng. But little did she know that what Dragonfly told her last night turned out to be wrong. Dragonfly looked away. The prince didn't like her very much, nor did he become friends with her. The prince was not someone she could laugh and play with. The morning breeze blows in, and the candlelight flickers. She felt regretful and aggrieved for a moment, and she said in a hurry, I forgot what I said. Maybe I said something that the prince's brother didn't like to hear today, but I just always talk nonsense. Can the prince's brother not do it? Really? The candle flickered a few more times, but luckily there was already a faint glow in the sky, so the room was dimly clear without the need for a candle. It's just that in late spring, there is still mist in the early morning. The spring fog enters the window, and together with the dark color of dawn that is about to fade away, the scenery in the room is rendered as if it has been blurred by light ink. Hazy dawn and hazy scenery. In the haze, the only thing that made Chang Yu feel clear was Ji Mingfeng's jade tree-like figure. The figure seemed to stiffen at the moment she spoke, and she couldn't be sure, because when she looked up at him again, there was nothing strange about him, and what he asked her was normal, and it was what he would ask her. He asked her, "You don't want me to take you seriously?" Ji Mingfeng's question is somewhat familiar. This was a routine she had often seen during her battle of wits and courage with Zhu Jin. She had to say she didn't want to, and then Zhu Jin scolded her. If you don't want me to take it seriously or make me angry, you need to know how to restrain yourself. If you don't do it next time, go to the solitary room to receive your punishment. That's it. Ji Mingfeng asked again when she lowered her head to think. You don't want me to take it seriously, do you? Don't think so. Don't think so, she said quickly. It's just unruly nonsense. I don't want my brother to take it seriously. After she finished speaking, she lowered her head obediently and waited for Ji Mingfeng's rebuke, and that was it. But Ji Mingfeng didn't reprimand her, and the matter didn't end like that. Ji Mingfeng looked at her for a long time, and his voice was a little hoarse. Which words are nonsense? Ji Mingfeng did not repeat Zhu Jin's routine. Qing Yu looked at him confused. Ji Mingfeng took a step closer. You think I'm good-looking, you like looking at me, and you feel happy when you look at me. Are these nonsense? His voice did not deliberately raise or lower, it was still the same tone as before, and even the speed of speech was the same as before. The words were spoken at a very fast pace, but for some reason, Changyu could feel the anger hidden in it. She did say this just now. At that time, she also said that she was very affectionate. I just feel that I feel very close to you today when I see you, brother Crown Prince. I am sitting here, watching you reading under the lamp, and I feel so. It looks good. Thinking about it now, these words are actually a bit thin. She had grown up with flower demons and had never been used to talking to people she was close to. However, Ji Mingfeng was a self-cultivation gentleman who valued etiquette. They self-cultivation gentlemen might feel that such words were extremely offensive and offensive to them. She was very panicked. I don't know what those words made you, Crown Prince, brother. Prince Ji is usually very patient, but at this time he seemed to have no patience at all. He interrupted her in a deep voice and said, "My question is not that difficult to answer, and there is no need for a long explanation. You only need to answer my yes or no." She trembled slightly. I was wrong. Those are all unruly nonsense. Ji Mingfeng didn't respond for a while. She whispered very softly, "Brother Prince, please don't bother me. I'm talking nonsense." She bit her lip. "I'm sorry. I will never talk nonsense again in the future. Don't be angry with me." She didn't know whether the apology could be redeemed or whether it could satisfy Ji Mingfeng. She felt that he should be dissatisfied because the look he looked at her was very cold. But she had tried her best, and she didn't know what else she could say. She stood in front of Ji Mingfeng with her head bowed, waiting for him to give up. For a long time, she heard a few words without beginning and end above her head, I originally thought. However, Ji Mingfeng did not finish the sentence. After a while, she heard another half-sentence full of anger. "Why? Do you even want me to?" But he still didn't say any more. These words were hesitant, as if they were extremely disappointed in her. But she was at a loss and had no idea what he was disappointed in. The room was extremely quiet for a while, and after a long time, Ji Mingfeng called her name. "Princess Heng Yu," he said. His voice returned to its usual calm tone, with sincere doubts in it. "I don't know that you are deliberately trying to stay by my side. You spend so much time every day. What do you want to do when you come to see me and stay with me?" Changyu looked up at Ji Mingfeng and shrank when he saw his cold gaze. "I didn't want to do anything, I just..." Interrupted by Ji Mingfeng, he raised his hand and rubbed his brow impatiently. "Tell the truth. I want to be friends with you," she whispered. "Be friends." Ji Mingfeng repeated these 3 words. He raised his eyes and looked out the window, but didn't speak again for a while. The hour has come, and the smoke of willows on the lake can be clearly seen outside the window. The clear mist is coming day by day, but it can only cover up 2 or 3 points of the green color made of jasper on the lakeside. It is a romantic scene. After a while, Ji Mingfeng asked her, "What kind of friend do you want to be?" There was no emotion or anger in the 6 words. She lowered her head. "They are just friends we play with." Ji Mingfeng was still looking out the window. "How many friends like this do you have?" She still lowered her head. "Not too many, just a few. It sounds like one more of me is not more, and one less of me is not more." She immediately raised her head and defended. No, brother Prince, you." But he interrupted her again. He finally turned his gaze back from Yanyu Lake and said calmly, "Princess, you want to be friends with me, but I don't want to be your friend." She was stunned. "But brother Shitzi, you didn't find me annoying a few days ago. Dragonfly also said that you were quite willing to see me. Today you just. She just for a long time but just couldn't explain why. "Come." Ji Mingfeng caught her words, looked at her calmly and said, "It's just that from today on, I think you are annoyed." After Ji Mingfeng left the study for a long time, Changyu still stayed there. She was actually a little scared. Young Master Jade is extremely courageous, handling powerful horses like taming chickens and dogs, breaking into snake dens like visiting tea houses, and has never been afraid of any monster. Even though Zhu Hibiscus is her nemesis, she has never really been afraid of Zhu Hibiscus. But Ji Mingfeng today made her feel a little scared. She was afraid that Ji Mingfeng would be angry. If Ji Mingfeng was really angry, it would make her even more afraid. She actually didn't understand why Ji Mingfeng was so angry. Although she made a mistake, she felt that it was not a big mistake. She didn't want to make Ji Mingfeng angry, so she answered all the questions Ji Mingfeng asked her truthfully. But what made her confused was that none of the truths satisfied Ji Mingfeng. She has never had such an experience, having to be so careful to figure out a person's thoughts, and cautious to please and flatter. She has never made such an elusive friend, and has never had such a frightening experience in making friends. She had known that Ji Mingfeng would be difficult to get close to, so she worked very hard. But today she just made a wrong step, and her relationship with Ji Mingfeng seemed to have returned to its original starting point. She felt sad and discouraged. She sat blankly in the south study room for a whole day. She suddenly thought, if Ji Mingfeng didn't want to be her friend, why not just stop being her friend? She felt regretful in her heart, but it didn't matter. She would always meet him in this life. 1 or 2 friends that she really liked but couldn't keep. She still comforted herself maturely, saying that life was full of regrets. But after a while, she couldn't help but think that there was no reason to lose heart so quickly. How could it be seen that Ji Mingfeng wasn't talking angrily? Although Crown Prince Ji thought she was quite annoying when they first met, in the past half-month since she came to Nan's study room, he has obviously not found her annoying anymore. He even helped her write comments in the book, which is proof. Although she said the wrong thing today and made him start to annoy her again, she might change his mind again tomorrow when his anger subsides. She was extremely optimistic for a while and extremely pessimistic for a while. She struggled with herself for a day. In the end, she chose to face this matter optimistically. Because she was thinking about it in the study until the end, she couldn't help asking herself a question. If she was really so annoying, then the person who annoyed her the most was not Ji Mingfeng, but Zhu Jin. But Zhu Jin wanted to beat her 3 times a day. Dun is not willing to abandon her, isn't it because she is also very cute? She was convinced by herself, thinking that Ji Mingfeng must only be talking out of anger. When she left the study at the last moment of Yushur, she had made up her mind to slowly coax Prince Ji back. Unexpectedly, as soon as she returned to the hospital, Ji Mingfeng, the old steward of the hospital, was welcomed into the hospital. The accompanying boy presented a large pile of books in front of her, with the book, The Meaning of Hutu Language, that she had left in the study today. The old steward suppressed his hoarse voice from choking on a cigarette and explained to her in a leisurely manner. The crown prince asked the old servant to bring all the books that the princess has read recently. The crown prince also said that the princess will be here tomorrow. There is no need to go to the south study to study. If you still want any books, just ask Dragonfly to go to the south study to get them to the princess. She was stunned for a while, and then asked the old steward tentatively. Then, Brother Prince, you mean, I can only go to the south study room again after he is relieved of his anger, right? The old steward was silent for a moment, and then said thoughtfully, I think that the prince may mean that the princess should not set foot in the south study room again in the future. This matter cannot be hidden from Dragonfly, and naturally, the disturbance caused in the south study room during the day cannot be hidden from Dragonfly either. Chung Yu never thought of deceiving Dragonfly. She came to the Lichuan Palace alone and had no acquaintances. She had been getting along with Dragonfly every day for most of the month, and she had become very close to her. She regarded her as a sister in her heart. She is willing to tell the sister everything that is on her mind, because she is smart and interpretive. There is nothing in Prince Lichuan's palace that she cannot see through, and there is no problem that she cannot answer. Sure enough, Dragonfly didn't take Prince Ji's anger seriously today, and looked at her with a half-smile under the lamplight. The prince and the princess are angry together, it's nothing more than. But he stopped talking again and just moved his green-white fingers very leisurely. He held his left cheek on the ground and said, the prince won't let the princess go to the south study room, so the princess will follow the prince for 2 days. This is not a big deal. Let the prince be angry for 2 days first, and then let me go. Let's explore the prince's tone and see how he wants the princess to apologize, and also save the princess from taking detours. Wouldn't it be wonderful? After saying this, I didn't know what came to mind, and I couldn't help laughing. The prince's temper is actually quite disturbing. Funny. Qingyu didn't have Dragonfly's insight or courage in this matter, so she didn't dare think it was ridiculous that Prince Ji lost his temper this time. She only felt it was scary. However, Dragonfly was so calm, which inevitably gave her more confidence, thinking that Prince Ji could eventually be coaxed back. But it's not without a trace of apprehension. Because of this uneasiness, Qingyu urged Dragonfly to go to Jushuanjian to look for Prince Ji early in the morning on the 3rd day. As soon as the Dragonfly went out, she immediately became nervous again. Before she had time to think about it, she followed the Dragonfly's footsteps and chased after him. As it dangled behind the Dragonfly like a little tail, she secretly thought to herself, so she secretly took a look at Prince Ji from a distance to see if his face looked better today than that day, and to see if he was still that lively. Angry, Dragonfly bumped into Prince Ji at the gate of Jushuanjian. Dragonfly seemed to say something to the Crown Prince. Qingyu saw the Crown Prince raise his head and glance at where she was. The glance was so brief that she had no time to react. The Crown Prince had already turned around and walked towards the hexagonal pavilion ahead, and Dragonfly followed. Qingyu also followed slowly, but she didn't dare to stand too close, so she stopped at the end of the grass path in front of the pavilion. From such a distance, she could neither hear their words nor see their faces clearly, but as she got closer, she suspected that Prince Ji might not tolerate her anymore, so she sighed and squatted there picking at the grass roots to wait for them. The two of them didn't chat for long, but in just a cup of tea, Ji Mingfeng had already stepped out of the wooden pavilion, and Qingyu quickly threw away the grass roots in his hands and stood up, standing by the grass path in an orderly manner. When Prince Ji approached, she swallowed and whispered, "Brother Prince, I." Prince Ji passed her by with an expressionless face, and his eyes did not stay on her for a moment. She was stunned, then immediately turned towards Ji Mingfeng's back and called out again, "Brother Crown Prince." Crown Prince didn't stop, as if he hadn't seen anything just now, and now he heard nothing. It wasn't until Prince Ji had entered just one courtyard that Dragonfly came to her side. Dragonfly, who had always smiled without leaving his lips, did not smile at this time, and his eyebrows twisted into the character Sichuan. She had never seen Dragonfly look so troubled, and her heart sank, and it took her a long time to speak. "Brother Prince is really tired of me and doesn't want to see me for a moment, so there is no room for apology, is there?" She actually hoped that Dragonfly would deny it immediately. But Dragonfly did not deny it immediately. Her heart felt heavy and she was a little breathless. Dragonfly saw that she was sad and immediately comforted her softly. "The princess is so smart and lovely. How can anyone in this world be tired of the princess?" But Dragonfly also knew that she was not a 3-year-old child, and she could immediately forget her worries if someone praised her for a few words. Dragonfly carefully explained to her, "In the past, I agreed with the princess to befriend the prince, because the prince did have many differences towards the princess. The Crown Prince likes and doesn't dislike the princess. The Crown Prince has few friends and is stern and cold-tempered. The princess has a lively temperament, which can warm up the Crown Prince's temper. The princess wants to be the Crown Prince's friend, and I think this is good. But the princess and the Crown Prince are too different in temperament, so they may not be suitable for being friends." Dragonfly forced a smile. "Princess, there is no need to worry and be persistent. What can you do if you don't make friends with the Crown Prince?" Qingyu was silent for a while, and then she spoke. "It can't be helped. She said sadly, "I just secretly want to stay with the prince's brother, and I think it would be great if I could be friends with him." Dragonfly looked deeply and asked her, "The princess wants to stay by the prince's side, but the prince doesn't want to be the princess's friend. Has the princess ever thought about it? In fact, the prince's concubine is also a character who can always stay by the prince's side." Qingyu suddenly raised his head. "The Crown Princess?" Dragonfly looked at her for a while. shook his head and smiled bitterly. If I didn't say it, I was thinking too much. Chenyu was very surprised. Does Sister Dragonfly think that I can't be the prince's friend, but I can be his prince's concubine? This makes no sense. He finds me annoying even as a friend. Besides, she said seriously, I am a prince. Princess, there is a high possibility that I will be sent out for marriage in the future, and it is impossible for me to become the crown princess of your Lichuan mansion. Dragonfly forced a smile. That's just my idea. I can't do anything about it. The crown prince feels, she paused, you are not a good candidate for the crown princess. Changyu nodded. That's right, I know. Dragonfly sighed. This time, your majesty, he is really a bit. Changyu bit her lip. I understand. She whispered, sometimes a person suddenly hates another person. There is no reason for this. The circles under her eyes were reddish, with a hint of daze and confusion as if she had just woken up from a big dream, and a bit of discouragement and sadness that revealed the reality with hindsight. Brother Prince has completely abandoned me. I shouldn't. If I keep pestering him, it will only make him angrier to me. Dragonfly looked at her red eye circles and watery eyes and sighed again. Your Majesty, he. However, he frowned and did not finish the words, and instead said, the princess should treat it like this, but there's no need to think about the prince anymore. There are many interesting things in Lichuan. Tomorrow I will take the princess to go sightseeing. In a few days, the princess will be happy again. Green-white fingers touched her, the corners of his drooping mouth raised slightly, and he comforted her softly. How many things in the world can there be in this world? It is happy to live casually and live casually. Isn't this how the princess spent her life before she met the prince? End of Chapter 12, Book 1. 3 Lives, 3 Worlds. Lotus Steps. Wherever step goes, lotus blooms. Metamorphosis. Original work by Tangqi Gongzi. English translated using Google.